So, thank you very much for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
So, I'm Howard Page. My full name is Robert. So, my author name is Robert H. Page. So, one of the things I do is I write crime fiction novels.
Okay, crime fiction. So maybe you can give me a little bit of a walk through how you got into that.
Certainly. One of the other things I do is I'm a musician. And when lockdown hit, like most musicians, I found myself unable to perform. So I'd always fancied using my creativity to write a story. So I decided to put pen to paper and write a novel. And it took me about a year to write the first novel, which turned into a trilogy. It's difficult to quantify a story in your head and put it into actually the printed page, because when somebody says a book is 100,000 words, your automatic response is, "Blooming heck, I couldn't write that much." But my story was 300,000 words, so maybe it's something to do with the fact that I talk too much.
I mean, speaking from personal experience, like once I get started, I just can't stop. You know, hours can like go 8 hours, 12 hours, whole days, weeks. You just sort of lose time, don't you, and get lost in your world,
You do, you're exactly right. But what I find is I have to compartmentalise between family stuff, work stuff, writing, and of course now music's back on the scene again, music. So my way is I tend to, I don't sleep too well. And when I'm lying awake at night, I'm either going through a song in my head to remember how to play it, or I'm thinking up cunning ways of killing people off in a book. So I think these things through, and then when I get up in the morning, I'll get up a little earlier and I'll maybe write for an hour and a half, brain dump everything that I've thought of over the last day or two, and then I just leave it, move on to work or whatever else I'm doing. And then maybe the day after, if I'm not so creative, I'll reread what I wrote the day before, correct all the spelling mistakes and tweak it a little bit. And then I might not have a creative day for a week, or it might be the next day. And I just do that as and when I feel I'm able.
Yeah. So it's something I'm always very curious about. So you sort of spit out all this stuff and you're feeling it in the moment, and you can kind of, you're visualising it all in your head, and then you've got to come back and edit it down. And sometimes I'll read through certain passages and I'm like, I'm not sure whether this is interrupting the flow. Then you get a bit precious about what you've written. How do you sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but how do you be objective about what needs to be in there and what needs red pen in? And do you know what I mean?
I certainly do. It's a very good question, and I guess everybody has a different approach, but my approach is to initially do the brain dump, get the story out there while you're being creative, because it doesn't take much to lose that creative spark, and when that happens, you need to give up for the day. So I try and output all the creative story, document it, and then the first pass I will go through it, find all the typos, make a few edits, make a few tweaks, and then I'll leave it and I don't go back to it until I've finished the book.
Right.
And then usually I will take a week or two out, because let's face it, the actual writing is the best bit.
Yeah.
That's the bit you love. It's a bit like writing software. Writing software is brilliant, but then going through and debugging it and testing it is boring. And it's the same with a book, I find, personally.
Right.
The most difficult, tortuous bit is rereading your own book 3 times. And each time you find things that are completely wrong, spelling mistakes, numbers in the middle of words where your fat fingers have caught buttons. But it's vital in order to keep the quality up.
Yeah. So, because I remember there was this whole passage, and I really enjoyed writing it, and you get so passionate in the moment, and I was reading this back, and I'm like, the whole pace of the book slows down here, and I've written about 8 pages, and I just had to kill it, and it was almost heartbreaking, and it took all my effort just to put that red pen through each page like this. You know what I mean? And it's tough. It's hard.
It is.
You know.
So do you write by hand or do you use Word or?
I have to do it on the computer because
Yeah.
my writing is atrocious.
I'm the same.
I'm dyslexic, so it's just what comes out as scroll. I originally started on pen and paper, and this is before I'd got better at spelling. And when I reread it back many years later, because the first book took me a long time, you know, and I was like, oh, I can't believe how bad this is. It was shocking, just how not just. It was both the quality of the writing and both the quality of the the technical aspects of it. It had changed almost completely, you know. It's I can imagine
happens.
your first. I mean, how long you been doing this now?
The first book, it probably took me 2 years on and off to
Right.
complete it, and I published it in the beginning of 2020. So I've done 7 books in 4 years.
That's quite prolific.
It's quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
But I am a quick writer. Once I've got an idea, I can dump 5,000 words in under 2 hours.
Oh, that's a skill, man.
But it takes me 4 times as long to actually get it right afterwards.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'm the same if I write a song. I can write a song in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Or I can spend 6 months and not write anything.
Yeah.
And it's about being in the moment and just getting the right idea, and
Yeah.
it's like pulling the starter on the lawnmower and then you're off
Yeah.
until the fuel runs out.
So if you go back to the first book, so you must have you read this back afterwards? You must have.
Yes,
done,
I've read it back several times. The first book, it's quite funny really, because I didn't understand the publishing process at the time. And I wrote the first book, and then I read through it myself, and then I thought, really, I should get someone else to read it because I don't know whether it's any good or not. And none of my family at the time or are readers really. So I managed to get an old colleague of mine. I served my time at British Aerospace at Lostock, so I worked there for 10 years. And I can't remember exactly how it came about, but I'd got back in touch with a guy that I'd worked with. He was a really, really clever guy, very articulate, and somehow the conversation cropped up about me having written this book, and he agreed to proofread it for me, which was fantastic. So I had someone else on board. And he found so many things that I hadn't seen. I don't know about you. I'm not dyslexic, but when you get these, how do you call it, puzzles where all the letters are mixed up, I can still read the sentences with all the letters mixed up.
Yeah.
What I find is I can read a full page full of typing errors and I don't see them. So I struggle to proofread my own work. And certain words I get wrong, like my fingers type form when I mean from, and then when I read it back, I don't see it.
Yeah.
So that's the
I
sort
do
of
that
thing.
same one as well. You
Yeah,
know?
it's I don't know. It's fingers and the brain. Brain's still just as quick. Fingers aren't, sadly.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. There's lots of things. So anyway, back to the first book. So I had some assistance in the proofreading, and when I got it back, I then didn't know how to publish it. So I reread it myself. I thought, oh, I love this story. And by then, I'd already started on the next one. So I looked into it and decided, as a technical person, why would I pay someone else to publish my book when I'm perfectly capable of doing it myself? And I thought, as a first-time author, you're never going to get any interest from a literary agent or a traditional publisher because you're unknown.
Yeah.
So what I did do is I sent it off. I did some research into the foremost UK-based crime fiction publishers, and I found 4, all based in London. So I went on the websites, made contact with them, found out the submission process, and it usually involves sending the whole of the manuscript of your book, or the first, say, 5 chapters, a bio of yourself. You've got to write a summary. Some wanted a press release. So I went through all these onerous tasks, submitted it to these 4 agents for the first book, and within about a month, I'd had 4 publishing contracts back. But they were all what they call hybrid contracts or contributory contracts. So what they do is they charge you, typically they're looking for £3,000 or £4,000 or £5,000 for the privilege of publishing your book and putting it on a few shop shelves.
Right.
And I thought, what am I actually paying for? Because I've written it, I've designed my own cover, I've done everything else I need, I've got an ISBN number, I've got it proofread. All I need is help selling it, which is ironic because I'm a salesman. But, so I thought, why would I pay somebody all that much money when I can do it myself? I can do Amazon ads, I can do Facebook ads, I can piggyback on other websites. So I decided not to take up any of these contracts and to publish it myself. So that was when, it was about the same time that Amazon brought out the Kindle Create app, which runs on a Mac. I don't know if you've used that yourself.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
So it's quite a clever tool. You basically import your Word file, or it could be a PDF or other formats. I use Microsoft Word, and it'll take you 100,000 words, chew it over, and then first of all it'll point out 106 spelling mistakes or things it thinks are spelling mistakes. It's not great with colloquialisms and rude words, and because most of my books contain both.
Right.
So you can spend a happy hour going through your Word file and updating it all, and then re-importing it all. And then what it'll do is it will format it. So it will work out where the chapters are based on the fact that you've typed chapter 1, or if you've got headings for your chapters, it picks those up. And eventually you end up with an on-screen version of your book. You can then add a forward. I usually add a page at the end thanking the proofreaders and adding a copyright statement. And now I add a plug to my older books, which obviously didn't know at the first one, and the link to the website. So that was how I published it. So you do that, it then compiles it down to a proprietary Kindle format. You then log onto the Amazon website, set yourself up an author account, and then using the KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing website, you then create your book, type in all the summary and the keywords and what genres it is. You upload your manuscript from the Kindle Create app, and then there are other things like age limits. It's even got a cover designer, or you can import your own one. And finally, when you've finished, you hit the button, and usually within 4 or 5 hours, but up to 72 hours, it'll come back, and the book's basically then available.
Wow.
As an e-reader Kindle book. You then go through the same process for a paperback. There's paperbacks, and then you can do the same thing for a hardback as well.
Right.
And as part of the app, you can choose whether it's matte, glossy, what colour paper, what fonts, how large it is.
Wow.
You can do all that. You need a bit of knowledge about the publishing process, because you need to know about bleeds and dots per inch and all the usual stuff. But if you're technical and you can do it yourself, it's not difficult. And if there's anybody listening to this podcast that is considering self-publishing on Amazon and needs any help, then reach out to me via my author page, which we'll give you details of at the end. And if I can help in any way, I will do.
Brilliant.
Applies to you as well.
Thank you. I probably will be hitting you up, because as what we spoke about, I've got a whole bunch of stuff I've not published.
Hit me up.
Right,
Hit me up.
I appreciate
I've helped,
that.
maybe 3 or 4 people get the books published over the last 2 or
Right.
3 years, because so many people have written it and are maybe too self-conscious, or they're frightened of getting any criticism to actually take that final step to actually put it out there.
That could be it. I mean, for me personally, it's literally just I didn't know how to do it. Do you know what I mean? Because the amount of words you just used to describe this process was epic. You know, I mean, can you imagine somebody who's
It's not a simple process.
No, exactly.
But I've worked in IT all my life,
Yeah.
and I'm one of these people that why would I pay someone to do something if I can do it myself?
Yeah.
Especially if it's within my own skill set. If it's roofing, then fair enough. Off you go.
Yeah.
But something like that, I would, I'll always try and do it myself.
So this might not even be a pertinent question, given how prolific you've been in such a short space of time.
You're too kind.
No, but what I was going to ask was, so if you go back to your first book and read it, and then you got, say, the last book, can you see a progression in your own quality of writing, or it's changing style maybe? Or
Yes, yeah.
Even in that
definitely.
short space of time?
Even in that short space of time, because you learn as you do it.
Right.
it's funny because my preferred reading material is fast and furious, twisting, turning type stories. I'm not into the old classics where you take 3 pages describing the wallpaper or a vase or the dress that the woman wore or how lovely her complexion is. I'm not into any of that. To me, to my little brain, that's noise.
Yeah.
I want the story. I want to know what's happening, who's doing what, what's going to happen, who did it, how they're going to get rid of the body or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what turns me on. And I think the quality of the stories was always good. The quality of the writing wasn't when I first started off. And I have gone back and revisited the first book after I finished the third one. And I did go to all the trouble of going through it and making quite a lot of changes to it for like a second edition. But if I was to write it today, I'm sure it would be a lot better.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I still think it's readable. I still get messages of people saying, did I know there's a spelling mistake on page 7?
Yeah.
But what you've got to do is, like music, you've got to develop a thick skin, because however good your material is, there'll always be somebody who gives you a 1-star review.
Yeah.
And it hurts, but
Yeah.
you've got to draw the line, because there might be another 20 people give you a 5-star review.
I think you've also got to just believe in your material and have that kind of, no, I believe in this. I'm doing this. This is happening kind of attitude, you know?
Yeah.
And some people are not going to like it just because they don't like it. It's like a personal choice thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just not for them. And that's fine. They're allowed to not like it, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's filtering, I think, between that's opinion and this needs sorting.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But it's an art form, so it's subjective.
Of course.
So one person's, I love curry, but, my 11-year-old grandson hates curry. He likes McDonald's, and I don't. So,
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right.
Different.
So, how many books did you say you've written?
So I've written 7. I was hoping to bring a copy of the first one to give you, but I've run out.
Right.
That was the second one,
Yeah.
and that was the third one. So the first 3 books have a common theme in the weasel. So without giving the game away, the first book is called Bang Goes the Weasel. Not pop, but bang. And the reason for that is the first casualty in the book, the first of many, is a dodgy diplomat whose nickname is the Weasel, and basically he gets blown up under Barton Bridge, I think.
Right.
So bang goes the Weasel. So that was where the title came from. And then his daughter is in the book as well. In fact, she has a hand in blowing him up, funnily enough. A bit of Stockholm syndrome, but I'll not go any further. Twinkle Twinkle Little Weasel is the second book, and that's where she is coming into adulthood and beginning to shine in her own way, which is basically being a sociopathic killer.
Right.
And the third book, Oh Where Has My Little Weasel Gone, is where she's crossed forces with some bad people and they're after her. So she decides to turn the tables and go after them, and does so in a very, very gruesome, horrific way. Yes, so not for the faint-hearted. I tell you what I would really love is for Guy Ritchie to pick up my books, because his combination of brutality and black humour is how I like to see my books. There's an element of black humour, but you only really realise that once you've sort of got halfway through. And there are common themes and personal things and Boltonisms that are in there as well.
Yeah.
Like there's always a recipe for a curry somewhere in my books. Somebody is always making a curry and it's a standing joke, but I do it every time because it is a standing joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and some of the character names, some of them are loosely based on people I know, but I always tell them.
Yeah.
There's a few that are loosely based on Bolton Wanderers players.
Right.
So in the last book, book 1, I think, there is a Jerome Cameron who sounds similar to a Bolton player.
Right.
We've had baddies called Davo, and we've had baddies called JJ, and a baddie called Campo.
Right.
And a few other more subtle ones. So,
Yeah.
So there's something in there for the football fans as well.
I've never done the name thing, but I've definitely taken archetype people in my life. One character was very, very heavily based on a taxi driver that used to pick me up a lot, and he had this very broad Bolton accent, and he just spoke. He said it how it was, and it wasn't necessarily always the things that you're allowed to say. Do you know what I mean? And I based the entire character on him because I loved his voice and I loved the way he just spat. Like zero filter, didn't give a crap. You know what I mean? He's like in his 60s. He ain't gonna change. You know what I mean? Like kind of guy. and he always made me laugh, even though sometimes it was a bit like, you know, that kind of laugh where it's like, oh no, what's he saying?
But I think that's a really good strategy because if you base your character on somebody, then you've always got something to fall back on.
Yeah.
And your characterization is consistent. When you're making a character up like I did, and this is again something you learn further down the line, my character's completely fictitious. So I have to think and be careful not to be contradictory because I haven't got that reference point.
Yeah.
So you did writing there, doing that. And a lot of the comedy classics like Fawlty Towers were based on someone in real life that somebody met. And
well, it's funny you say that because this guy's meant to be humorous in the story, and I've literally almost verbatim ripped things off that he said. I hope he don't read it because it's not mean. It's not like it sort of pokes fun in a friendly, nice way. Because I did like the guy. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't meant to be nasty or anything.
So you're probably out of touch with him now to give him the heads up.
Yeah, I'll just probably avoid him.
I've mentioned a few friends. People come to me and say, "Oh, will you put me in your book?" And I do. And then the next time I see them, might be 2 months later, they'll go, "You killed me off."
Yeah.
I said, well, what do you expect?
It's a crime novel.
When you've got serial killers. You know, I don't have police in my books either. I find everybody writes about the police solving crime as well. To me, it's more about the baddies and what they're up to and how they're eluding the police rather than how they get caught. So in my books,
interesting.
The police are usually other baddies who are after other baddies.
Right.
And that wasn't a conscious decision. It's just the way the first couple of books happened. There are odd policemen in there, but they're not a main ingredient.
I've never thought about that because you're right. It is always like Sherlock Holmes or some other. It's the whole thing is chasing down the bad guy, like you're saying, and going through the clues and
it's always the policeman that's the lead character.
Yeah, and that's become like a staple trope that is very overused, really. Yeah. You know, and it is. I'd imagine reading that book would be quite refreshing. That you don't have any of that. It's.
Well, I just like to be different. So I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But I suppose that gets us onto music because I play bass and sing in a classic rock band, and I play drums in a punk band. And the whole punk movement. When I was a bit young for the original movement, but I was a teenager, and that was all about being different. People tend to interpret it differently these days, but I've always liked to be different. I've never followed fashion. I've never understood why somebody would pay 200 quid for a pair of trainers so they can be like the guy next door. Well, no, that's just not me. And I think when you come to writing, whether it's music or books, I think you've got to find something to hang your hat on, something a bit different. And again, whether that's painting or being a musician or writing a book. And my books are more about the baddies and the relationships between them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, that's how genres die, isn't it? Because there's so much derivative work of the same sort of thing.
Nailed to death, don't they?
Yeah, and then everything the whole market gets saturated, and before you know it, that genre doesn't exist anymore.
So,
you know,
back to the punk band. The bass player's son is a footballer. He plays for Widnes. He's a young, upcoming lad, brilliant player. And his surname's Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E.
Right.
But they keep getting his name wrong on the team sheet and spelling it Bryn. Right. And it's an irksome occurrence within their household.
Right.
So in the latest book, I've got a Mike Bryn.
Right.
So Mike is the bass player. And of course, I spelled his name wrong deliberately just to wind him up. But I've given him a heads up and told him. So and I told his son actually. His son came watching Sneech in Burnley at the weekend. So I told him and he laughed.
Right.
He helped me load my gear out afterwards, which was nice.
Ah, bless him. So it's something else you said earlier. I thought was quite interesting. You were talking about Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
And I was also at the same time thinking, what's next for you? And it kind of sounds like you want this to be picked up and be dramatised on the either on the small screen or on the big screen?
Yeah, I think if you read the first 3 books, there's enough material in there for probably three to 5 miniseries of maybe 10 or 12 episodes.
Right.
And I think that would be my ideal way. I'm not sure, and this is sounding very arrogant, but I'm not sure a film would do a book justice, because the films never do. It's like, if you take J.K. Rowling, and she got rejected dozens of times.
Yeah.
And she's a brilliant writer. You know, I'm not. I'm just a writer. So you've got to accept rejection all the time. So, but I would love certainly the Weasel stories to be a mini-series. And this one is like Tales of the Unexpected, but on steroids. That was a bit of a sidestep. That's just short stories.
Yeah.
I just had a couple of short stories in mind. One of them's a football story, and it's about, funnily enough, it's about a Bolton Wanderers game, but it could be anywhere. And it just puts a twist on the fact that you can be watching football on a stream, and yet you're getting a message on your phone 2 minutes beforehand to say someone's scored, and it's sort of a bit of an anticlimax because you're waiting for the goal then.
Yeah.
This puts a twist on it, and what would happen if you got that message 2 minutes before the goal was actually scored? Armed with that knowledge, what would you do? So that's one of the short stories.
Right.
But there's a few other black stories as well, and simple, like, long bad joke type horror stories, but so you can have that one.
Hey, thank you very much. Afterwards. Fantastic.
So the cover to that one, it goes across the back actually, is a photograph that I took walking back from the pub one night, half cut, and I was trying to get a picture of the moon, but unbeknown to me, the phone focused on the tree in front, and I looked at it the day after. I thought, oh, I love that picture. It looks quite spooky, so I kept it. Yeah. And I ended up using it for the cover of that one.
Right.
So,
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If they do make it into a mini-series, are you not a little bit scared that you might be removed from the creative process and they might completely change it or butcher it in some way?
You know what?
Or violate the soul of the story?
Yes and no. I'm not precious enough to be there filing off all the corners. I would just be happy that someone had seen enough quality in the story to actually warrant doing something with it. That would be the first thing. I'm not sure I would ever make a screenwriter. I'm not sure I've got the patience to take a story into the dialogue between the different characters. But I would, if it did happen, I would like to have some sort of executive producer type role, so that if it veered too much off the track, or the wrong person was cast, then I would have some say in it.
Yeah, you might not have that.
Might not have that.
Yeah.
I would take that. If I could get it on a small screen by a small budget film company, I would take it. I would take it. And I'm sure they would want some assistance of some sort.
Hopefully.
It'd be nice to be rich.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just? So I think my last question probably is, where can people find your work?
Right. So all my work is on Amazon. So if you go to amazon.co.uk, or if you're listening in another country, it's available across the whole global Amazon marketplace. So just go to your local Amazon site, and then if you search for my author name, that's Robert H. Page, and it should take you to the 7 books that I've got published. Alternatively, if you search for Bang Goes the Weasel, that's the first book. That book title is unique and should take you straight to me. And the cover, it's similar to this one, except it's red, and it's a picture of a Thelwall Viaduct, which is another one that gets blown up in the first book.
Right.
So yeah, so if you do that, I've also got my own website, which is www.roberthpage.co.uk, and you can find me on Facebook as Robert H. Page, author. And if you want to contact me, do so through the Facebook page and send me a message, and I'd be happy to reply.
Cool. And if this is up on the socials, I'm sure there'll be links in the respective places.
Fantastic, and we'll reciprocate.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.